mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. With John Amanchukwu. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. With John Amanchukwu. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're trying to match your crew. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. We're trying to match your crew. Disturb the peace. Let's disturb the peace. From heaven, there's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. With John Amanchukwu. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. With John Amanchukwu. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're trying to match your crew. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're trying to match your crew. Disturb the peace. Let's disturb the peace. From heaven, there's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. With John Amanchukwu. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. With John Amanchukwu. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're trying to match your crew. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. We're trying to match your crew. Disturb the peace.
Welcome, my friends out there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to Disturbing the Peace. I'm your host, John Amanchukwu, coming to you live from Y-Refi Studios. Today on the show, we will talk about the passing of civil rights icon Jesse Jackson. He passed at the age of 84. Then I'm going to bring on Auron MacIntyre to talk about Secretary of State Marco Rubio's, his amazing speech at the Munich Security Conference. He knocked the ball out of the park. And then I'm going to bring on Steve Deace to talk to us today about the midterm elections. And then we'll get into more commentary on Jesse Jackson. This today, all at Disturbing the Peace on my live show. Well, my friends, by now you have heard the news that Jesse Jackson is deceased. He passed at the age of 84. He's a notable civil rights icon. He leaves a legacy of fighting for justice. I want to show this clip here about his legacy. Take a look at this.
Civil rights activist Reverend Jesse Jackson. Civil rights activist Reverend Jesse Jackson has died at the age of 84. His family announcing the news overnight. More on his life and legacy right now.
Put your hands together for our leader, the Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson.
Civil rights leader, politician, and community activist Jesse Louis Jackson was born October 8, 1941 in Greenville, South Carolina. He met Jacqueline Lavinia Brown. They got married in 1962 and together had 5 children. At that time, in the early 60s, the country was in the throes of the civil rights movement.
Will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood? I have a dream.
Jackson says he was so inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King, he went to work for him and was with King when he was assassinated in 1968.
I actually succeeded Dr. King after King's assassination in 1968 as the premier leader of the civil rights movement.
I never stopped serving.
In 1971, Jackson founded a group called People United to Save Humanity, or Operation Push. Jackson ran for the presidency in 1983, but lost the Democratic nomination to Walter Mondale. In a second try in 88, Jackson landed second place in the Democratic primaries, falling short to then Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis.
He played a significant role in the transition to some extent of the civil rights movement from protest to politics.
Around this time, the civil rights leader formed a group he named the Rainbow Coalition because it was made up of people from all races and ethnic backgrounds.
That is the unfinished business that I'm about, fighting for equal opportunity for all Americans and peace in the world.
Congratulations.
Over the years, Jackson was recognized over and over again for his work on equal rights and efforts to help the less fortunate. He collected over 35 honorary degrees.
Reverend Jesse Jackson is just so special, not just to us, not just to our country, but to our world.
Supporters say in the last several decades, Jesse Jackson did more than anyone to move this country's civil rights agenda forward.
We now have the first African-American president. It would not have been possible if it were not for Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson.
I've sought to be a long-distance runner. I would like to be measured by my box score, not by the home run or the strikeout, but being a long-distance servant.
And Jackson's followers promised the movement will continue.
Well, you know, I have to say this. We'll get into more commentary on the legacy of Jesse Jackson later in the show. But I'm personally in a position of mixed emotions, sentiments, and feelings when I think about the legacy of Jesse Jackson. We do know that this life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not just one race at a time, but it's a marathon. And he alluded to that even in some of his commentary in this video clip Jesse Jackson started off, I would say, on the right track in the 70s. He was a person who was bold and courageous about defending the least of these, in particular, the baby in the womb. He made it popular to talk about genocide, in particular, the Black genocide that we see in America. And to see him change and move from that position solely because in 1984, he wanted to run, as a Democrat president. And he did an about face. He sold his community down a river. He moved away from the position of genocide and labeling the god awful sin of abortion as what it is. It's the removal of one's life. He wouldn't call it that anymore, but he positioned his posture to talk about now a woman's right to choose. And I have to bring that up because, albeit he died at the age of 84, I believe that spiritually, Jesse Jackson died in 1984. He died physically today at the age of 84. But spiritually speaking, he died a long time ago. And it behooves us all to remain steadfast in the word of God. He moved from a biblical worldview on the topic of many issues, even the issue of, sex. He changed his position on that. He founded the Rainbow Push Coalition. And think about how far the rainbow has drifted today. God has a rainbow that naturally occurs in nature. It's based upon the Roy G. Biv color system. And this new bow, this Rainbow Push supported bow, this ungodly bow is the bow that's being talked about the most today. If we're not careful, people will attempt to commandeer symbols that God has given to the church. But the rainbow, my friends, belongs to the church. We are the bride of Christ. It belongs to us. It's a reminder that God will not flood the earth again with water. And sad to say, this new bow today in our culture is a bow that has removed one stripe. It's the stripe of the color indigo, which represents God. And so these individuals who espouse to this belief, they want the blessings of God, but they don't want God himself. And so these things come to mind when I think about the legacy of Jesse Jackson. Yes, he fought against injustice, and the segregation that we saw from Jim Crow laws and things of that nature. He fought against that. He risked it all, to defend the rights of all people, in particular Blacks in this country. These are things that we can celebrate him for and his work across the globe. But the mixed emotions come in my viewpoint, when I think about the fact that there could be more babies alive today. Of course, whites, Hispanics, Asians, Pacific Islanders, and Native Americans. But there are 20 million Black babies that have been deleted since the original inception of Roe v. Wade in 1973. 20 million are gone. Jesse Jackson used to speak up for them. But the Democrat Party is hard upon colored people. We have to bow. We have to give up, our viewpoints on what the Bible says. We have to move far away from this to appease those who support the donkey. And I'll say this also. I'm against people on the right who think that we should have these heartbeat bills. Every time I search the word of God, I never find a passage of scripture that gives us as believers the right to take a baby's life. I don't see that, but I do see this thing called the 10 Commandments. And number 6 says that thou shall not murder. We have to keep that in mind. At this time, I want to pivot towards bringing on my first guest of the day. We're going to bring on Auron MacIntyre in a little bit. Auron MacIntyre is an international affairs commentator and strategist specializing in U.S. foreign policy, transatlantic relations, and global security dynamics. He provides analysis from a conservative worldview, examining how American leadership shapes Western alliances and national sovereignty and strategic competition. Many of you have already viewed the clips of Marco Rubio, when Marco Rubio stood before the security conference in Munich. And some are saying that he delivered the greatest and or best speech that they have possibly heard a politician deliver, and or the best speech that he has delivered himself. And we're going to show you some clips from that speech today. One of the things that we can say about Marco Rubio, our current Secretary of State, is that gone are the days of calling him Little Marco. Gone are the days of calling him Little Marco. You have to refer to this man as Big Marco now. Big Marco is representing, and he's doing it in America First fashion. So I want to bring up Auron MacIntyre so we can have some dialogue about this security conference in Munich. Auron, how are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. I want to jump right into this. What are your thoughts about Marco Rubio's speech? From 1 to 10, how would you rate it?
I thought it was phenomenal. I would say that it is a 10. It was very impressive. We obviously have seen this message from the Trump administration before. J.D. Vance, I think, gave a very thoughtful speech about the need for Europe to pick up its end of the deal, to protect itself, to take its borders seriously, to protect its culture. And I think that that was an important speech, but Marco Rubio in this speech bridged the gap, I think. In the first speech, it was understood that there needed to be a change in Europe, but it was kind of the harsh medicine. This time, Marco Rubio came in and built bridges. He said, look, when we see Europe, we see friends, we see allies, we see our cultural heritage, we see strong nations that we want to be able to come alongside us and help us create our vision of the future. We don't want to see weak allies. We don't want to see people with open borders. We don't want to see people who are shamed about who they are and are willing to sell their country out because of it. I think that's what really helped this speech resonate. It allowed Europeans to look at the Americans as people who are, yes, still delivering tough love, but only because they really care about the future of Europe and see themselves reflected in the past of Europe.
So after assessing this speech, what do you think about the relationship between the U.S. and Europe? Where are things headed right now?
Well, it's a difficult moment. When we look at places like the United Kingdom, we see that they are currently in a lot of tumult. The government has been treating the native population very badly. They've opened their borders and allowed mass immigration. This is extremely unpopular. And despite the fact that the British people have voted against it multiple times, they keep having their political representatives foist it upon them. Now we're seeing the rise of Rupert Lowe and his new party, pushing out even Nigel Farage, who is thought of as being more right-wing than the Conservatives. It's very clear that there is a real and consistent effort by the British people to draw closer to what many people would think of as a MAGA policy, understanding that they need to put the nation and their people first at the end of the day. That's the reason that the government exists. We're also seeing the rise of parties like AfD in Germany with a similar message. So I think that while Europe as a continent has been having a lot of problems, it is very clear that the people of Europe are starting to notice that issue. And they're looking to places like the United States and movements like Donald Trump's MAGA as a way to mirror what they would like to see done in their countries.
I want to play this first video clip for you, Auron, and then get your reaction. This clip gets to the fact that, Europe must align with America's reshaped vision of the world. It's the long clip. Can we play that clip now?
We increasingly outsourced our sovereignty. to international institutions, while many nations invested in massive welfare states at the cost of maintaining the ability to defend themselves. This, even as other countries have invested in the most rapid military buildup in all of human history and have not hesitated to use hard power to pursue their own interests. To appease a climate cult, we have imposed energy policies on ourselves that are impoverishing our people, even as our competitors exploit oil and coal and natural gas and anything else, not just to power their economies, but to use as leverage against our own. And in a pursuit of a world without borders, we opened our doors to an unprecedented wave of mass migration that threatens the cohesion of our societies, the continuity of our culture, and the future of our people. We made these mistakes together. And now, together, we owe it to our people to face those facts and to move forward to rebuild. Under President Trump, the United States of America will once again take on the task of renewal and restoration, driven by a vision of a future as proud, as sovereign, and as vital as our civilization's past. And while we are prepared, if necessary, to do this alone, it is our preference and it is our hope to do this together with you, our friends here in Europe. For the United States and Europe, we belong together. America was founded 250 years ago, but the roots began here on this continent long before. The men who settled and built the nation of my birth arrived on our shores carrying the memories and the traditions and the Christian faith of their ancestors as a sacred inheritance, an unbreakable link between the old world and the new. We are part of one civilization, Western civilization. We are bound to one another by the deepest bonds that nations could share, forged by centuries of shared history, Christian faith, culture, heritage, language, ancestry, and the sacrifices our forefathers made together for the common civilization to which we have fallen heir. And so this is why we Americans may sometimes come off as a little direct and urgent in our counsel. This is why President Trump demands seriousness and reciprocity from our friends here in Europe. The reason why, my friends, is because we care deeply. We care deeply about your future and ours. And if at times we disagree, our disagreements come from our profound sense of concern about a Europe with which we are connected, not just economically, not just militarily. We are connected spiritually, and we are connected culturally. We want Europe to be strong. We believe that Europe must survive, because the two great wars of the last century serve for us as history's constant reminder that ultimately our destiny is and will always be intertwined with yours. Because we know
there he is, my friends. You can't call him Little Marco anymore. You have to call him Big Marco. He just represented for our country. I want to ask this question of you, Auron. Was this message symbolic, strategic, or both?
Well, I think it's critical because at this point, many have looked at the American First Project, the project of nationalism, and thought of it as something that meant that we had to be isolated, that we had to withdraw from the international community, that we couldn't have allies, these kind of things, that this was a fundamentally selfish project that had to look only inward. But I think what Marco Rubio is showing the world is that actually nationalism can be the building block for a healthy international order. When you have strong countries who are looking to their own well-being, who are capable of defending themselves, who are capable of producing their own energy, producing their own products, having healthy economies, you can actually strengthen and increase the stability of what we understand as Western civilization while still allowing us to care about our particular needs. And that's what I think was so important. It creates this moment where you can give the leaders of these European nations the permission to reach out and say, yes, we do see the value of nationalism. We do see the value of these stronger individual countries. But that doesn't mean that we have to cut off our alliances. That doesn't mean that we can't have good diplomatic relations. That doesn't mean that our economic ties suddenly disappear. This is not the dissolving of all bonds between all nations. Instead, we are making each individual nation inside this network stronger so that it can be stronger overall, and it can continue to provide what many think of as the critical foundations of Western civilization to their individual countries. I think it's a expansion of the understanding of the MAGA movement to a region of the world that has been somewhat hesitant, thinking of itself as one unified global whole, looking for more and more globalism. Instead, we can say, no, there's a healthy way to do nationalism that still allows us to work together.
On the topic of nationalism, you hear a lot of people talk about that today: nationalism, Christian nationalism. Some even talk about white nationalism. What is your definition of nationalism?
Well, this is a very difficult thing because we have conflated the word nation with the word country or state. It used to be that we understood that the nation and the state were not the same thing. A nation was a group of people, and the state was the organized government that operated and helped to rule any given area. Often there were kingdoms or empires where you included many different nations into the same state, or there were some where only cities were states classically. And so it becomes very difficult for modern people to have a discussion about what nationalism is, because if you think even in the American context, we call our individual provinces states because, of course, originally we were designed to be a coalition of different nations brought together under the United States of America. But today, when we're talking about nationalism, I think most people are looking for governments that are no longer interested in this globalistic idea of governance, this understanding that somehow all of the different nations of the world should be melded into one. Instead, we understand that people are best governed when they are governed locally. That was the basic understanding of federalism and subsidiarity in the American founding. We didn't want all the power in Washington, D.C. We wanted particular parts of the country to be able to govern themselves in their own way, because Californians are not like Floridians, who are not like New Yorkers, who are not like people from Connecticut or Tennessee or Michigan. We all have an Americanness that holds us together, but we also have different challenges that we have to overcome. We are simply looking to apply, I believe, that same understanding to peoples across the globe. It is okay to recognize that people in the United States and England might have shared cultural values, might have a shared civilizational awareness as Westerners, but that we might have very different ways in which we need to govern our peoples. And we don't need people from Brussels or any other foreign entity pushing down their way of life across all of these Western governments simultaneously.
Furthering the conversation on nationalism, with that in mind, does it support the America First agenda, the nationalist agenda, when we send funding to foreign countries? Should we continue to do that? Or does that put us on the same par with, the globalist agenda, sending resources that America could use to foreign countries when we could use that same funding to better the outcomes of Americans?
I think it does set us against our ultimate goal. Look, we all understand that there are worthy causes out there, but ultimately, as you say, an American First agenda means caring about the problems in the United States first. And I think you can agree, there are plenty of problems in the United States right now, and we could definitely use every single dollar to resolve those issues. There's simply no reason for American taxpayers to pay for your wars in Ukraine or Israel or anywhere else. And that doesn't mean there's any ill will towards those countries or we somehow side with some opposition. It simply means that the money should be reserved for the people of the United States to resolve their issues. And I think there's more and more an awareness of that. Again, that doesn't mean that we're cutting off diplomatic relations or having any kind of personal animus towards any given country, but that's not the same as handing billions of dollars to any given nation. Many of these countries can handle things on their own and are simply tied to the United States because of this money. I think we should allow the sovereignty of these nations to exist in the same way we should allow our sovereignty to exist. And as George Washington pointed out in his farewell address, the best way to maintain the sovereignty of a constitutional republic is to watch out and avoid favored nations or hated nations. he said we should always be working for the good of America and avoid long-term entangling alliances. Short-term commercial alliances, yes. Long-term diplomatic alliances, no.
When you hear someone say that America is a Christian nation, does that make you cringe? Does it make you celebrate the fact that our forefathers and the founders of America were sensitive towards Judeo-Christian beliefs?
I believe America is fundamentally a Christian nation, and I don't see how we could view it any other way. If we look at the founding documents, if we look at the stances of most of our beginning peoples across the nation, even many people don't recognize state churches were still a big part of America, even into the 1800s, well after the Constitution had been signed. This is simply woven into the character of the United States. It framed our laws, it framed our goals, it framed our understanding of ourselves as a people. Now, I will say this. I've always opposed the phrase Christian nationalism, not because I stand against the actual objectives of many Christian nationalists. I believe that the Bible and the Word of God should inform all our laws and our understanding of our nation. My problem is that it makes it sound like Christian nationalism is some kind of strange, novel, new take on what America should be. No, that's just what America has always been. We don't need to become Christian nationalists. It's just American to believe in Christ as the foundation of the country. Now, we've always had to carve out and allowed other people to express their faiths, but I think there's zero problem with preferring Christianity as the religion of the United States, culturally and throughout. That doesn't mean you need to establish churches. I'm against that, ultimately, but I do think it does have to be baked into the way that we understand our national identity. If that doesn't bind us together, what would?
Furthering the conversation around the church, and what about the amount of anti-Christian bigotry that we see today?
Of course,
we rarely hear politicians address this. We oftentimes today, you're hard pressed to find a pastor who's really to hit it head on. But what we're seeing right now within Trump's administration, Pam Bondi put together a task force to fight against anti-Christian bigotry. I think that signals a good message that we're headed in the right direction. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think that we have seen consistently the left attacking Christianity. We've seen the relentless insult, the making light of the idea that faith should in any way inform the identity of the nation or the way that we understand our laws, our traditions, our heritage. But that's obviously, I think, becoming more and more unpopular. The left has worn out its welcome, I think, on this in many ways. In a lot of ways, the left needed that controversy, that pushing back against Christianity. We're deconstructing all the things that Christians believe in. That's what really gave them a lot of energy. But there's simply nothing transgressive about insulting Christianity at this point. And if anything, engaging with Christianity, believing in Christianity, espousing Christian beliefs, living that life, that is the most rebellious thing you can do in many areas of the United States, especially in leftist enclaves like Hollywood or any other media. It's very clear that what was once transgressive and generated the energy for the left has now just moved the other direction. And I think that when you recognize that Christians are constantly being insulted, constantly being attacked, and in many cases being illegally discriminated against, it becomes important for the federal government to step in and say, no, we're not going to allow this anymore. This is not how we want to see Christians treated in the United States. Now, I think this mainly needs to be a cultural shift, but I think where it touches legality, it is appropriate for the administration to evolve itself. And so I'm glad to see them taking the time to review these things. In many ways, the Civil Rights Act has not been used to defend Christians, while it's been used to defend Muslims and Jews and Hindus and every other faith. It's time that the founding religion of America gets the same level of protection and treatment that every other religion is now receiving while it's being practiced inside our borders.
On the topic of other religions, other than Christianity, setting that aside, what religion do you think poses the greatest harm or threat to Western civilization?
Well, again, that can be a very difficult question. I think there are many different angles that a religion can ultimately threaten the United States or threaten Christianity. I think that Islam is probably the most obviously violent religion in this way. And so, in that sense, it tends to be the one that people focus on, and rightly so. When you have a terrorist going out to kill innocent Christians, it does matter that Islam is the one that consistently seems to come up in that area. But we can also think of those like Hinduism, which, while not overtly, maybe aggressively against Christianity, has come to dominate many parts of our nation. We're now seeing Hindu temples in places like Texas, which should be very strong Christian, footholds. And so I really think it's important for us to recognize that while I personally would not encourage immigration from foreign religions into the United States, the true bulwark is going to be that cultural instantiation of our understanding of Christianity as the central founding block on which all American culture is built. We need to be preferring it. Again, it doesn't mean that you can't have a Hindu service somewhere or that people can't worship as they like if they're Islamic. But ultimately, when it's in the public square, whether it be our educational system, our government, or anything else, it is the church bell that should ring out before the call to prayer or any other religious ceremony. I'm sorry to say this to all of my brothers and sisters, but if you are a Muslim or you are a Hindu or you are Jewish, you are not following the one true religion. Christ is the only way to God. And that is what we have to be focusing on. All other faiths are false. They are all paths that lead you astray from the truth of God's love.
And it sounds like you believe that the Bible is right when it says that I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. That's a statement that we have to hold true to, and I hold true to it as a Christian and also as a preacher, but it can get you in trouble. It makes it seem as if you are, closed-minded and not open to other faiths and or religions. What are your thoughts about that?
Unfortunately, I've experienced that the same. I have said exactly as you have. I have simply quoted the Bible saying the only way to God is through Christ. And I have been called anti-Islamic. I've been called anti-Semitic for pointing this out.
Oh.
But the truth is that we have to believe in God. This is the only answer. Christ is the only answer. And we should be allowed to state that as Christians. That is a core belief that we hold. We should not soften that for anyone, no matter how politically incorrect it is presented. We should always love those of other religions. We should always reach out to them with the love of Christ, letting them know about our faith and how it is the truth. But ultimately, that is what we have to stand on. We should always approach with love, but we have to tell the truth. We are not helping anyone by hiding the truth.
Getting back to Marco Rubio's message, are we seeing America first with the new packaging or a fundamentally different approach?
That's an interesting question, and I hope that isn't the case. Some have suggested that the attempt here from Marco Rubio was to put a neocon spin on the MAGA agenda, talking about globalism, talking about Western civilization, talking about the need to build bonds, implying in some way a global structure. I hope that is not ultimately the situation there. I do think that there is a way forward that I think was ultimately articulated by Rubio, which is both nationalistic in America first, but still recognizing America having a role in the world. Now, I am one who would like to see America's foreign adventurism greatly scaled back. I'm sorry, but I don't think that we should be striking countries in the Middle East. I don't think that we should be invading countries in South America. I think that that is ultimately long-term not a good strategy for American nationalism. I also don't think that that means that we can step away from the reality that America is the global hegemon and does have a role to play in global security, global supply chains. We're still going to need things like oil and rare earth minerals. If we don't have them here, we're going to need trade deals. We're going to need to acquire those territories. That's just a geopolitical reality. So my hope is that what Marco Rubio was trying to do was strike a balance between that nationalist understanding, that America first understanding, while also showing a way in which we can be global leaders while still putting our interests first. However, I think it is reasonable for people to be concerned about the co-opting of the nationalist MAGA understanding. And there's a very fair case to be said that you should trust, but verify when it comes to Rubio and the Trump administration on this issue.
Auron, I have to say this. I appreciate your candor and your honesty on these topics and issues. In closing, what can America learn from Europe as we move forward?
Well, I think there's a lot of lessons to learn there. First is that you simply cannot allow your sovereignty to be eaten up by these larger organizations, the European Union, NATO. So much of what Europe has put themselves into is a bind created by their inability to solve problems at their national level and being willing to kick everything up to these more globalist institutions. I think the other thing you have to recognize is how quickly a nation's identity can bleed away when it loses its faith. Most of Europe is not Christian at this point. It is, even though it is in many ways the cradle of Christian civilization, wider Western Christian civilization, it has dwindled in that faith, and we can see its lack of ability to defend itself, its lack of animating spirit because of the loss of that faith. I think it's critical as we watch Islam take over many parts of Europe to understand that we are always in a clash of civilizations, and there will be a faith that rules in our civilization. It can be Christianity, it could be Islam, it could be secular humanism, but something will occupy that void. And so I think we need to look to Europe and recognize that as they try to reinvigorate their faith, as they try to reinvigorate their national identities, we should hold on to those things that have allowed us to avoid that fate in many ways, because many of the same forces are attacking us and reducing our ability to do so. We should not let ourselves fall victim to that same game plan.
Auron MacIntyre, thank you so much for joining Disturbing the Peace. How can people follow you and support you?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for having me. I have the Auron MacIntyre Show. It's on Blaze TV. It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple, everywhere you'd expect to find those things. And of course, I'm also on Twitter. I always forget. I don't call it X. You can find me there at Auron MacIntyre.
Thank you so much. Auron MacIntyre. Let me get it right. I have a long last name, and all my life people butcher it, but I'm going to get your name right. Auron MacIntyre. Thank you so much.
Got it. Thank you.
Disturbing the Peace. God bless you.
Appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, listen, I tell you what, I have to bring him back on to talk more about geopolitics and talk about Sharia law also. We're seeing the impact that the infiltration of false ideologies and false gods. And he talked about the violence of Islam that has, crept into America, especially in red states like Texas. And so we're going to talk more about that. I'll have him back on to discuss it. But now I want to share my heartfelt sentiments towards my sponsor, Y-Refi. Let's just be honest here, friends. Let's face it. If you have distressed or defaulted private student loans, if you have gone through a period where, your student loans have gotten behind and you're trying to catch up and you're trying to get a second job and a third job to pay down your balance, Americans are experiencing that every day. But there is hope, my friends. Nobody is coming to bail you out, however. You got to keep in mind that, bankruptcy is not an option, but you can take charge of your situation by contacting Y-Refi. Can you imagine being debt-free and not living under this burden anymore? The burden, the albatross that comes from bills upon bills upon bills piling up high. The first step is contacting Y-Refi. Y-Refi is a lifeline for people who are drowning in debt. It's a lifeline. If you go to yrefi.com, you can read testimonials from other people who have been where you are and how they've escaped. You can even see what their monthly payments were versus what they are now. Y-Refi offers a 3-minute rate check. 3 minutes, my friends. That's all you have to do. 180 seconds, 3 minutes. Without any credit impact. And bad credit is accepted. All you have to do, my friends, is just call 888-Y-REFI-85. That's 888-Y-REFI-85, or log on to yrefi.com. That's yrefi.com. Listen, give them a call today. My next guest is waiting in the bullpen. He's ready to go. I'm bringing on my good friend, Steve Deace. Steve Deace is a nationally syndicated conservative radio host, political commentator, and author, a good friend of mine. I love him. I love his beautiful bride. We were just together at the TPUSA America Fest event back in December. And I reached out to Steve Deace to bring him on the show. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, brother. How are you doing? Thank you very much.
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you much for joining me. I want to first and foremost by thanking you for coming on the show again. I'm getting some feedback from audio. John, you can fix that for me. But I want to thank you once again for coming on the show. There are many things that we doing. You have a national syndicated show. You're around the world. You have a documentary. You probably wrote another documentary. You've written several books. All of the above. You have joined your brother from another mother. Black History Month. And I woke up this morning to news of Jesse Jackson passing. And so I want to talk about that with you at the top of our segment. How do you view the legacy of Jesse Jackson?
You know, it's fascinating, John, in that I kind of view Jesse Jackson's story as emblematic of a generation of Americans. And whenever I go off on this tip, the boomers in my audience lose their minds. But they are the reaction to what occurred in their generation. The boomer generation has been collectively devastating to America. It started with the Summer of Love, and then the counterculture and the sexual revolution, and it started with high-minded ideals. But eventually, anything that is detached from the kingdom of God cannot be any meaningful reform movement here on Earth. It just can't happen. There's no such thing as the secular. This term largely never existed within Western tradition until this boomer era, for example. There was just things that were godly and godless, right? And I look at what's happened with Jesse Jackson. I shared with my audience today on the 4th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. Jesse Jackson wrote what I think to be one of the most devastating takedowns of abortion I've ever read in my entire life. And I've written more on that topic than maybe any other. And it just completely deconstructed the abortion narrative from the overpopulation standpoint, from the dad won't be responsible for it standpoint, mom doesn't want to be responsible for it standpoint. Life really isn't that valuable from a theological moral premise. Even pointed out that it's fascinating. He kind of viewed abortion as, hey, it's fascinating that at the advent now, this next stage of equality for Black Americans as we're coming out of the civil rights movement, and now that we are getting unprecedented access to the sectors of power in America, all of a sudden now they want to put a Planned Parenthood in every corner of every Black neighborhood in America and talk about abortion. And it was very emblematic. You know, he thought it was kind of the next evolution of Jim Crow coming off the defeat of slavery. Okay, now that we have equal rights, now that we're going to try to infringe on those rights. I mean, this is just a potent, I would argue, prophetic, spirit-led takedown. And yet that persona is nothing at all like what most of America is going to remember about him. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because somewhere along the way, you make a calculus that your talent is really yours to barter with, yours to navigate, yours to strategize with, your intellect, and that your position is so special and so precious that if you did not make moral calculations, then you just could no longer be effective, right? I mean, he wants to be the Democratic nominee for president in the 1980s, so he's going to change his view on baby killing just within a decade in order to do that. Because look at all the good he would do, John. Look at all the good he would do on behalf of civil rights and equality if he just changed on this one thing that is holding him back from upward mobility within the Democratic Party. And so he did. And then he still didn't get what he wanted out of it. But once you cross that Rubicon morally and spiritually, your life becomes one of calculations at that point, right? And you know, he ends up having an affair, ends up having a child out of wedlock. There were all kinds of corruption allegations and everything else with the Rainbow Push Coalition in the latter years of that entity. Then, his son, was kind of a clown, frankly, as a member of Congress. Only got elected because he, won the lucky sperm club, basically. And so this all happens because you start making calculations. The oldest one is ye be like God. We're making these kinds of calculations all throughout our society in this era. Well, maybe gender's not what we think it is, or sex is not immutable, and maybe we know what it is, and so we take that latch on Pandora's box and we open it, and now, the amount of carnage and innocent lives that have been lost because we're tinkering with cosmic wiring beyond our understanding as humans. The first biological fact ever said about any human being that's ever been born is it's a boy, it's a girl, and we think we can go back now and reshape that and remake that. And the consequences for that are tragic. The amount of parents whose kids won't be home for Christmas because of school shootings or what happened in Rhode Island just the other night. These are all the consequences of original sin. Ye be like God. And somewhere along the line, I don't know what happened between 1977 and 1984 when Jesse ran for president the first time. But somewhere from 1977 to 1984, he viewed himself originally as a minister of God, that there was a higher law and authority he had to submit to I am that vessel, I am that ministry, and God needs me to make these calculations, otherwise the word will come back void. And we all make these choices in our lives. We're making a lot of those choices right now as a society, and the ends never justify the means, and the results are always a monkey's paw, Faustian bargain.
There are 20 million black babies missing. 20 million missing. As a result of abortion. Jesse Jackson could have stood boldly in the gap and defended the sanctity of those babies, but he chose not.
Mm-hmm.
He chose to be Democratic presidential nominee twice, 84 and 88. He put that first. And so I said at the top of the show that Jesse Jackson had his spiritual death in 84, but his physical death took place today. I believe that he sacrificed everything just to gain the elusive, nefarious blessing that's behind the Democratic Party. You think there's something nefarious that hovers around in politics that just pulls the cable strings and the heartstrings of men and women of God?
I do, and I think that we have gone from what's a manifestation of our sinfulness into what is demonic. And I would say the difference between the two is our sin is when we take the natural instincts, ambitions, urges, giftedness, and opportunities and platforms and voice that God imbues into us uniquely as being fearfully and wonderfully made in his image. It's when we take those things and then we go beyond the boundaries that he has set for them and we exploit them beyond his will. That is sin, okay? And so that's where I have a natural urge. I'm naturally attracted to members of the opposite sex. I have a natural urge to sexually join with them. So I'm going to take that beyond the boundary of a marriage and the propagation of our species, and I'm going to devolve it to just something of a dopamine hit and experience and call that a sexual revolution. That's a manifestation of our sin. What we're living through in our era is and that sets the stage for what comes next. That's what the sexual revolution, the counterculture that Jesse represented. That institutionalization of our sin is what sets the stage for what's next. And that is now demonic influence, nihilism. And this is now when we go from the greatest fear a parent had when you and I were growing up is that I was going to come home from work one day early without letting anybody know, and I was going to catch my latchkey kid fornicating with his girlfriend, and what an awkward, terrible moment that would be. The new fear is that's my son's sinfulness. The new fear is my son will never even ask a girl out. He won't leave the internet. He's convinced that he's to be a shut-in and voluntarily celibate. And now I'm trying to get him to ask a girl out on a date. That's nihilism. That's now where we go from trying to exploit the natural things God puts in us to denying them, John. That's demonic. That's a demonic inversion. That's the upside down. And that is now where, maybe God really didn't make me male, and that's why I have these homosexual urges there's no male or female at all anymore. All right. And those are demonic influences. And what you saw in Jesse's generation represented the gateway drug to this, that we are able, and we exploit them just a little, God will honor it because our motivations and our cause is just so just and right. And that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. And now we're dealing with a generation now that is just openly nihilistic, and we're having to literally put genies back in the bottle. And that's where we are now. And neither side now is immune to this. We have this emerging thing on the right called based. Well, what are we based in, and who are we based on? Right? And I'm not eager in refighting the French Revolution, John. It was a disaster of history. They've had 6 constitutions since our own. It ended with a reign of terror, and all it did was just empty the prisons of people falsely put there to put a new group of people falsely in prison there, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, okay? I am interested in refighting the American Revolution, which is no king but Jesus, and is I would argue maybe the only successful revolution in all of human history going back to Genesis 3, because it began with that moniker. And so we're having this debate right now on the right, which is, well, do we still need God? Do we still need Christianity? Maybe we can do this in our own steam with just our own outrage and our own instincts. And I can promise you that's doomed to fail.
When we look at the midterms, let's assess GOP. What mistake are we making?
Man, this has been a problem as a party we have had my whole career. And this is my 20th year this year working full-time in GOP politics. And we have this thing. Trump's the best at not doing this, but he still even does it sometimes, okay? Which is, we get blamed for all the things we really believe, but then we don't act on it, so we get none of the benefit of it. So we get all the blowback, but none of the benefit of actually following through on it. And I could give you a myriad of examples if we had time, which we don't.
Share a couple with me.
Well, like look at Epstein, for example. All right. So we should have just released all the files we're releasing right now. Should have just done it last year. Instead, we let the left lie to their audience for a year that this is really all about Trump when he's barely in the things. And most of the time, it's him calling the feds or the cops on these people, all right? Because of maybe a handful of our donors that nobody cares about also visited Epstein Island. So then we cause a split in our own coalition over this, right? We've had people leave Congress over this. We're fighting Thomas Massey over this. Sean Ryan's got one of the largest podcast audiences in the country, helped get Trump elected 2 years ago. Now he's doing videos about how this was a worthless vote, and I'm sorry I did that. For what? For literally nothing, right? When that's an example of we get all the so we said we were gonna, or the deportations is another one. So we're gonna deport everybody, which I'm all for, by the way. And so that had the moderates. Well, that's gonna be my gardener and housekeeper. They get all freaked out. Then we don't do those deportations, and now the base is freaked out. So both sides of the teeter-totter in our coalition now are freaked out, and for what? For nothing, right? We should actually just maybe try doing the stuff we claim we're for, so that we actually fire up voters that are likely to vote for us based on that, because we're going to get the blowback from the other side anyway. And I'll leave you with this, the abortion issue. The reality is, no matter how we try to moderate on this position, the other side's all going to run on, we want to put women in prison and get rid of the whole practice. And no matter what we say, that's their messaging. And so to me, if we gain nothing, if you offered the other side, listen, you want the exceptions? Okay, we're going to ban abortions in America except for life of the mother, rape, and incest. Would they take that deal, John? Do you think they take it if we offer that to them? No, John, they would not. No, you know that. That's why you're laughing, right? And so we're negotiating against ourselves. Who are we negotiating with here? Our enemies. We have to defeat our enemies. And we cannot defeat our enemies by taking on the liability of what we actually believe in so they can criticize us, but then not follow through so our own debase is depressed. And yesterday I talked to Joe Mitchell. He lives in my home state of Iowa. He's running in the 2nd Congressional District here. And he's the first Iowa candidate for public office that Charlie ever endorsed before he passed. And he's going to be our nominee for Congress in that district, and it's held by a Republican, so he's trying to maintain the seat. And I said, hey, what's your biggest challenge right now? He said, our own base is just dispirited and demoralized right now. That's the biggest challenge I have. And I think it's because we get attacked for what we believe, but then we don't actually do it. And so all our base sees is the attacks for what we believe, but not the benefits for actually following through on it. And that's been a GOP problem my whole life.
Can we not take a punch?
And that's why I said Trump is the best at this, which is why he's the most effective leader the party has had, since Reagan. He's the best at this, but he still at times succumbs to this kind of an impulse of, I'm going to do it, but then I'm not going to do it. And so MSNBC and CNN and all their people got all into a lather that we were going to follow through on something, and then we don't really follow through on it.
Steve Deace, up at the end. I have to talk about these topic issues because I appreciate you going at this the right way, biblical worldview. I come in contact with a lot of people on the right, many people who use the Bible as a prop and the cross as a decoration. But it's evident that you live it, that you're true to it. The cause of Christ exudes from you and from your message. Thank you so much for joining Disturbing the Peace.
Likewise, brother. Love you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today on Disturbing the Peace. I hope that you enjoyed the two guests that I had on, Auron MacIntyre and Steve Deace. We're going to be back tomorrow talking more about the legacy of Jesse Jackson, and we'll talk about Black History Month and the future of Black America. I'm going to bring on Delano Squires to join me. You don't want to miss it. I want to say this in my closing, that if you don't know Christ as your Lord and Savior, my friends, you are walking in this life dangerously. The Lord loves you. He died for you. He wants to save you. He wants to deliver you. This world is hard, man. I'll be honest. You go through some high highs and some low lows, but there is a peace that surpasseth all understanding. And that peace is not found in drugs. It's not found in explicit and illicit lifestyles. It's found in the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Would you, my friends, follow the path of Jesus Christ? Find a local church, find a Bible study, get into your word, pray, seek the Lord, because he loves you, he cares for you, and he wants you to be in right fellowship with him. Let me know what you think below, my friends, in the comments section. Am I right or am I wrong? Am I weak or am I strong? God bless you and God bless America. And listen, we're signing off from YRE5 Studios. Take care.